There's a party in the mess hall and everybody's invited. It's a celebration of First Contact Day, the anniversary of Zephram Cochrane's first warp flight and meeting some Vulcans as a result, and it's been organised by Naomi and Neelix. For most people, it's an excuse to eat pierogies, a decision I can wholeheartedly get behind, but for Neelix it's also a chance for noise and acting like a bit of a tit to remind us how different he and Tuvok are. Oh, go on then, Voyager, you've not pushed this stuff for a while, so you get a free pass. Tuvok's saved from being coerced into dancing by the arrival of Chakotay with interesting news. We've detected a settlement ahead. Not unusual in itself, but the inhabitants appear to be Talaxian, which is... well, let's use the phrase statistically generous, shall we? I suppose we'd best pop over there and see what excuse we're going to be given for finding them some 40,000 light-years from home, and right in the middle of our path. Curious development number 2 is finding that the life signs are in the middle of an asteroid field. Voyager won't fit between them, and Paris still hasn't figured out how to fly a pod down yet, so we'll take the Delta Flyer Jr. instead. They must have found out we've got Neelix on board, as some bugger is shooting at us. If it was to keep us away, it fails spectacularly. Some kabooms on the ship mean we're forced to land, and the rock with the life signs in is the only real choice. And yes, I'm still going to count this as another crash for Paris. Back on Voyager, the kabooms have been detected. Sounds terribly dangerous, and they think the Delta Flyer Jr. might have been damaged, so the logical choice is to send in another shuttle. It's a miracle any of them have survived this long. A rescue mission might not be needed anyway, as Neelix is already being tended, and by another Talaxian. She's the first speaking extra of the show, so let's bring out the Wheel of Names to find out what we'll call her. Fizbin by Commander Billy T. Riker and the Jamin Logicians. Fizbin seems happy enough that Neelix is alive, but significantly colder when he asks about Tuvok and Paris. Perhaps our reputation precedes us. Or perhaps it's because they're xenophobic. Fizbin and the others saw us trying to call them and didn't respond because we're aliens. At least they're not responsible for attacking us. That's according to her anyway, as she says they're pacifists. The explosions were just for mining. Quite the coincidence that they'd start exactly where the Delta Flyer Jr. was, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe the cold welcome is because they've been burned before. A kid at the entrance is welcomed by Neelix, but Fizbin sends him away after he says that Neelix doesn't look dangerous. And that assumption would also explain why, after leaving, Fizbin locks Neelix in with a force field. I suppose we could ask why the bedroom has a barrier we can see through instead of a door, but I'm a little worried the answer would be a sex thing. Voyager's getting the rescue shuttle ready by trying to make its shields resistant to those kabooms. It might be a waste of time, though, as another ship turns up and asks us what the fuck we're doing in their asteroid field, the one they're mining in with explosives. We explain we were here to contact the Talaxians, their existence being something the guy on the screen already seems to know about. How curious, when the explosions were so close to where the Talaxians are living. Anywho, Explosion Boy here says he can't stop exploding things because he's on the clock, and that means it wouldn't be safe for us to go in. He'll keep an eye out for our people, though. Or bits of them, I guess. Back on the asteroid, that kid snuck in to take another look at Neelix. Their chat is cut short by the arrival of Fizbin, who Neelix has assumed is his mum, and he hides behind a desk. Fizbin's here with their leader, and Neelix is freed from his cell. We're told Paris and Tuvok have also been released after medical treatment and are now fixing up the Delta Flyer Jr. so they can bugger off. Neelix wants to hang around and have a chat, though. That's fine, says the colony leader, but the other two aren't welcome. The colony likes to keep to itself, a limit not applied to Neelix. Fair play to Neelix, though. He says that if the others aren't welcome, then he's fucking off too. Fizbin is apologising for their leader's behaviour while she walks with Neelix, and that gives us time for a lore dump. There are 500 people in the asteroid, the colony having been carved into the rock using parts from most of the ships that brought them here. Water and oxygen comes from ice on the asteroid, which seems a bit short-sighted unless they have very effective recycling systems, but that's not our problem. Oh, and her husband's dead too, so, very sad and all that, but no competition. She drops him off at the Delta Flyer Jr. and blanks Paris when he tries to talk to her. Good choice. The repairs are eventually completed and we're good to go. The computer disagrees, saying we have an intruder. It's the kid stowing away in the back of the ship, his desire to see Voyager getting the better of him. The kitchen's still got plenty of mystery meat left over from the group of people we kidnapped in the last episode, so Neelix instead decides to take the kit back. He's not the only outsider here, as Explosion Boy the Miner is also paying a visit. Not a friendly one either from the looks of it, what with him saying he plans to demolish this asteroid. Evacuation is going to be a bit problematic, as the Talaxians cannibalized all but one of their ships to make this colony. Fizbin tries to argue and Explosion Boy pushes her aside. The kid escalates things by throwing a rock, and another miner tries to escalate it further by grabbing the kid. The final escalation goes to Neelix, who knocks the shit out of the miner and nicks his gun before telling them all to get the fuck out. They say they'll be back in 3 days to begin the kabooming before they scarp her. Neelix has convinced Fizbin to come on a tour of Voyager with her kid. A stop in Astrometrics lets them see Talax. Meeting Naomi in the corridor diverts Fizbin's kid to the holodeck, and that means she and Neelix can have a meal alone. This gives us some time for another mini lore dump. This one's about how her husband was killed by some Rozzers on a planet where they tried to settle. Leaving to build a home in the asteroid was supposed to make sure nobody else would cause problems for them. We've seen how that turned out. Still, maybe Janeway's negotiation skills can help. It's the following day and we're all around a table to see how we can solve this. Explosion Boy just wants the minerals, but there's no way to do that without cracking open the asteroid. An offer to pay with energy instead is rejected and negotiations break down, so Neelix joins Fizbin in the mess hall. There is a single upside. The miners have given them more time to break down their equipment to take it with them. Janeway's also offered to take them and their stuff to the nearest habitable planet. Fizbin and the kid leave to start packing, the latter clearly a bit pissed at Neelix for not fixing everything. Neelix is worried about the planet we've chosen for the colonists. It's pretty close to some other species, and he's concerned about how things will go down if anything kicks off. Curiously, Tuvok points out that they're more likely to defend somewhere they've been for a while, like, the big rock they're in now. If only there was someone to convince them to make a stand. Voyager can't do it, of course, as this is a political matter involving unaffiliated species, meaning it'd be a prime directive fucky. Presumably Janeway's just not in the mood this week. But Tuvok points out that shields erected around the asteroid might be enough to make the miners not waste time picking a fight and just move on. He even compliments Neelix and says he's a very versatile person who could probably do well if he tried to organize such a resistance. Maybe Tuvok's realized that this is a way to get rid of the prick while maintaining plausible deniability. Janeway bumps into Neelix in a corridor shortly after and notes he's taken his own ship out of storage to fly back to the asteroid. She doesn't order him to not get involved, possibly because she hasn't got a leg to stand on with that argument, and instead wishes him a safe journey. Convincing the settlers to make a stand is a lot easier than you'd have expected, what with the pacifism and all. The miners will probably try to intervene once they figure out the asteroid is having shields installed on the surface, but Neelix has some ideas on how to make it go faster, and he can keep the miners busy with his own ship. Fizbin's happy with how things turned out at least, and as people start to make arrangements, she attaches herself to Neelix's face as a celebration. A little later, Neelix and the leader of the colony are off installing the shield gizmos. There are only 2 left, which makes me wonder what those miners have been doing to leave it so late, but they're here now, so let's have a bit of a Barney. Pooping happens and Neelix draws their attention so the other ship can finish installing the shield. It's not entirely successful, as the miners can fart out fireworks at the same time, one kabooming on the asteroid and causing a bit of shaky. Neelix poops some lime green at the next firework to stop it, so the miners knock out his weapons. That leaves him with only one way to stop the next firework, and he flies straight at it. Some yellow poop kabooms it before he gets there, though, fired from the Delta Flyer Jr. because Janeway just couldn't resist a chance to shit on the Prime Directive. She's even come along herself to make sure we break it properly. The last shield gizmo is installed, a firework from the miners fails to get through it, and that's the end of that. The miners have given up and buggered off, so it's time for Neelix to leave. The kid asks him to stay, but Fizbin says he can't due to his responsibilities. There's also a chance that kiss only happened because she expected them all to die, and now wants to get rid of him. Back on Voyager, he visits Naomi. She's done some growing up since we last saw them together a few seasons back, neither needing help with a report nor having the time for a game of Codiscot. It's likely a strong influence on the conversation he has with Janeway in the mess hall later. He's dancing around how to say he's thinking about leaving Voyager, but Janeway has already figured it out and helps him along by saying Starfleet might find a permanent ambassador in the Delta Quadrant useful. It's bollocks, of course, but she's not going to miss out on the chance to get rid of him. Maybe she'll teleport all of the fucking Leola route over at the same time to make her point. Word has spread that Neelix is leaving, and there's a queue of people who've turned up to line the corridors and make sure the bastard doesn't change his mind. The joy felt by the crew is such that even Tuvok has a little dance. Neelix buggers off to his new home in the colony, and we leave Fizbin to wonder quite what she's got herself into as we fly away. A change! An actual, real change! And with only 2 episodes to go before the end of the entire fucking series. They'll all be dead in under a month, of course, without the doc to cure the food poisoning, but that's not the point. Imagine what genuinely impactful stories we could have had if the writers were permitted this level of control over the show's entire run. That's a drum we've been banging for years, though, so let's look at the episode instead. You could argue it's another episode where there wasn't enough of a build-up for the payoff, like the deaths of Lieutenant Broken Nose and unnamed guy called Durst, or the unmasking of Seska as a Cardigan, but I think that mostly works in its favour this time. Coming across some of his own species unexpectedly and deciding to stay with them should be an abrupt event when the alternative is leaving with Voyager. Perhaps the one exception, the one aspect that would have had an effect to provide a build-up for him leaving, is the interaction with Naomi. We're shown that their relationship isn't as close as it once was only at the end of this episode, and it feels undercooked as a result. There's probably a joke about Neelix's food in there somewhere. You could also argue that this story would have been better served as a 2-parter, and there are certainly episodes of Season 7 that could have been dropped to make it happen, but announcing it as a big thing would likely have tipped the show's hand about there being an important event. Regardless, at least he got a better send-off than most of the ball gets. If I want to pick holes, I could point out that we never addressed the question of how these people got here in the first place. It can't be a generational thing, as they were knowledgeable about the war that happened when Neelix was young, an event just over 20 years prior. It would have taken Voyager twice as long to reach this point, let alone 6 freighters, so we'll have to assume there were a whole lot of swirlies involved, especially as we were told they'd already tried to settle down at least once. To be fair, though, the question of how they came to be here isn't particularly important. Voyager's own journey has shown that shortcuts are 10 a penny in the Delta Quadrant, and we're watching a show that had Amelia fucking Earhart in it, so this is hardly the worst offender for things being out of place. As farewells go, it could have been worse. Neelix has shown himself to be one of the unexpected growth characters of the show, at least when he was allowed to be more than simply comic relief, so there's a certain poetry to him going in an unexpected direction as things draw to a close. End of episode.
Are we sure we want to do this? There's no going back if we take a shit in here, you know. Anywhere else and she'll make it someone else's problem, but this is Janeway's personal sanctum/armoury. She'll never forgive us.
You're assuming she'll know who did it.
I mean, it feels like the list of suspects isn't going to be very long.
It's not about suspects. It's about evidence. Janeway's a scientist, which means she'll test it.
Well, that makes it worse.
Does it, though? What if it wasn't ours? What if, hypothetically and for reasons we don't need to explore, you knew someone who'd been keeping samples of all crew feces in a teleport buffer?
Paris?
Paris.
Good lad. Woof.